Hello, Happy New Year, and welcome back to meetrabbits.org. What I've got on my mind today is rabbit resolutions. All right, to be honest, I'm not a huge resolution person, but I have been thinking about some changes, some focuses, some goals for the Rabbitry that I want to get on and maybe make this year, just to improve things, have things go a little more smoothly. So that got me thinking of resolutions. Like I said, not a huge resolution person, but it is a good time of year. You usually have more downtime around the beginning of the year as we change and the days are short, so we're not outside bustling in the gardens and yards and different things. So good time to put some thought into things like these. So these are some things that honestly have been on my mind for a while, just part of the continuing and ongoing management of the Rabbitry and looking towards what I maybe want to accomplish and areas of focus that I think will improve the Rabbitry better. So got my list here. 3, 2, 1. 3. Add new no cages. Okay, that one's tongue-in-cheek. It's kind of a joke. I've said I don't know how many times over the last couple of years, okay, this is the last cage I'm gonna build. Don't need any more. We're good. This is it. Let's stick here. And what did we do a few weeks ago? We built 3 more cages. So it happens. But honestly, I'm pretty happy with the setup I've got now. These are empty, but these are grow out and transition cages that can easily be full. These are grow out cages over here, pretty much exclusively. I've got my bank of breeding does and those other 3 cages that can either be for breeding does, for holdback breeders. And what I mean by that is if I have some young stock, say like this champagne doe here, something that I like the looks of as they're coming up that maybe I'll keep long-term as a breeder, or maybe it's just one that I'm holding back in the meantime to have something to either replace another doe in improvement or to have something ready and not too far off in case one of the does starts falling off in productivity. And I hate to say it, but I'm looking at you, Holly, and I'm only looking at you, Holly, because Holly is 4 years old now, so I expect that her reproduction should begin to fall off. Noticed for a while that she's a little harder to keep condition on in between litters, just after she's still throwing good litters, but afterwards, like, she drops weight. She doesn't look as great while she's nursing, especially as she gets to the tail end, and I usually have to boost her a little bit to get her back into condition. So just signs that she's she's gonna need replacement. So that's it. I've got a great setup here, and to finish off just the tour of the setup, these are the bucks, so they're separated away from the does, kind of on their own a little bit over here. Also easy for me to keep good separation and be able to easily tell my crew, which is basically my sons or my son-in-law, when we are harvesting. It's easy for me to say absolutely nothing from here or there ever gets killed, ever gets harvested. Unless I tell you because I'm culling out an old doe or something, but that's kind of besides the point. And they know that this is where everything that's getting harvested comes from. So it kind of makes that easy from that standpoint. So again, that's mostly tongue-in-cheek, but I don't need any more cages. I need to focus more on working within the setup that I've achieved and doing better with what I've already got. So brings us to number 2, which is very much tied into number 1. Number 2 is to make good culling and selling decisions regarding the breeders. I am finding that I am not keeping a good breeding schedule. There are different things that have come into play with that over the last 1.5 years or so, and a lot of those are life and family events. We had some tragedies, some deaths in the family. We also had some very happy events. My daughter got married here on the farm, and that was, we did it almost exclusively ourselves. We had a pig roast, did all local food, did the whole menu ourselves, but there was a lot of prep in the yard in general. We're on 3 acres. So we did some different cleaning up, some different sprucing up of the areas. And it was a wonderful time. We absolutely loved it. It was this really nice family community and local event, and it was really neat. So really happy with it. But it did impact the Rabbitry because it impacted my time here. It also impacted, I didn't want does kindling litters at a time when I knew there was too much activity around for that to be a calm environment for them. I didn't want things going bad with that, especially if I wasn't able to be fully available to them. So I had slowed down and stopped some breeding for a while surrounding a couple of different times that were kind of connected to that. And then also because we ended up, now I've got a lot of cages empty, you can see that, and that is because we kind of ended up really congested for a bit here. And that is because, you know, we couldn't focus on harvesting when we were focusing on those other things. So call it an excuse, call it a reason, call it whatever you want. I call it life, and I'm you know, I have no regrets. Like I said, it was a lovely wedding. My daughter and her husband really enjoyed it, and we're really grateful. So that was what really mattered to me. So getting back to it, it's kind of time for me to start making some decisions on culling, if it is a culling decision, which culling means removing from the herd. So that could be something that, say, I could sell it, I could send it to auction, or I could decide that maybe I am not feeling good enough about the traits that you would be passing on to a potential breeder. Not something I'd worry so much about at an auction situation, because that's kind of on you. What you buy is what you get. But if I were selling anything here as a breeder, I want to know that they're going with reasonably good reproductivity. You know, I want to be honest and open, and I want to sell somebody something that's useful and good for them. So the culling is not because these are all bad. The culling is because I'm too heavy in does right now. I'm a little too heavy in bucks. But that's a little bit of a different situation because I'm keeping the different breeds of bucks relative to the program that I want to accomplish. So I frequently will cross different breeds for grow outs, but I also want the option of selling off some extra breeders to bring some money back into the Rabbitry. Now, my Rabbitry is not really for profit. My Rabbitry is more of a homestead Rabbitry that is for my own family, but that doesn't mean that I don't take advantage of the opportunity to make a little extra money on some of these rabbits when I can, which helps support and helps me, you know, helps fund some of the furthering goals, breeds, projects that I maybe have in mind. But the bottom line is that these 8 does you see before you, and you heard me talking about maybe holding another one back, at least for a little bit. There's a lot of breeding potential here, and that probably is more than I need or really want to deal with. But this also plays into the top. Now, you know, we've had a little bit of issue with some of the litters, some of the breeding. A lot of that had to do with the summer and really like twice the numbers of high heat days, 2-3 times the number of heat waves that we usually get here. So I do believe we had some sterility in the bucks, which I do not hold against anybody. And that's why I'm waiting to a later time of year to start making those decisions. And those decisions will be made, you know, out over the breeding cycle starting now through the spring. Are you easy to breed? Are you taking care of your litters? Are you packing on too much fat? Another part of my culling decision, which is not really related to performance as much, is whether or not I need to pare down some of my different breeds that I'm keeping. Because like I said, if I want to keep purebreds, I've got to keep a buck for every breed that I have. Obviously I have 4 bucks because I do really want to get heavier into those champagnes, and I want to be able to mix those genetics up amongst these unrelated pairs better. But I also have purebred Californians and purebred New Zealands. and that's a lot. So by probably removing one of these breeds from the Rabbitry, potentially two in the long term, but probably right now I'm talking about probably one, I can also reduce one of the bucks that I'm keeping. And then again, I can always crisscross, mishmash it and cross them up for grow outs. But you know, I feel like if I can get the champagnes going the way that I want to, probably focus those on the breeding stock. Because the other thing is that is in terms of selling breeders, kind of competing more, selling New Zealand's and Californians, because they are the most common breeds. They are the most available, and people have other options. I'm not going to say there's a lot of options, because there just aren't a ton of meat rabbit raisers out there. So I also like being able to offer to people, you know, a lot of them are going to come looking for New Zealand's and Californians, because that's probably what they're reading first and foremost that you start with. So not uncommon for that to be what they're looking for. But on the other hand, not a lot of close by champagne breeders. Off the top of my head, I can think of 3 that I commonly come across. One is in New York, which was a 4-hour drive for me. That's where I got mine. Another one is in Rhode Island, who I might actually be talking to at some point if I feel like I want to mix some genetics separate from that New York Rabbitry where I started. And another one I think is in Vermont. So, I mean, all of them, probably the closest to me is 2 hours. So, you know, those are just some of the things and some of the thoughts in my mind, but that's what I need to be thinking towards this year is getting that number of does down to something that is manageable and fits my needs without being too heavy and carrying the overhead of having more animals than I need for what I want to accomplish. Which brings me to number 1, and number 1 is keep a more regular breeding schedule, which I talked quite a bit about already. You know, the life events that kind of thwarted our breeding schedule a little bit this year. But the downside to that is that is also definitely coming into play with some of the breeding issues with does that might be overweight, bucks that the bucks I don't think are too overweight. They're definitely doing the job when I put the does in there. They're always trying, so I don't feel badly about the bucks, but I do have issues with does that are not that receptive, that are not lifting enough. And, you know, we have had some issues with the litters. Even some of the mothers that were proven mothers should have done a better job than they did. And I frequently think that is obviously the internal fat, that's a known breeding issue, but I also think that the mothering itself, not so much on new does, first timers, but on repeat does, the mothering itself, I think you're much better off maintaining their instinct and their good mothering traits if they're regularly doing it. You know, if they're practicing their craft, just like any of us. So the more they do it, you know, the more inclined they are going to be to want to take care of their litters. So, you know, I hope that's not me anthropomorphizing too much and injecting or projecting things onto them, but they are creatures of habit and instinct. So I think when we disrupt that, because we're not getting them bred on a good schedule, that's on us. So that is definitely my number 1 and what I want to work on. And then that number 1 is very much tied into the number 2. It is time to make, like I said, some management decisions, some reduction in culling decisions, and I want to go into that with good solid information. I don't want to call a doe that is performing, that is getting bred, that is lifting and is taking care of her litter, and then end up keeping a doe that is not. Now, the champagnes, I really enjoy these champagnes, and I really still have high hopes, and I am not counting anybody out right now, but because they're new does, and I always give new does chances, every doe. I don't care who you are, what breed you are. I don't care if you're a meat mutt. Having said that, some of my meat mutts have been my best mothers, so you know, that's what's on my mind. Those are my resolutions for the year. Are they all of the resolutions or management decisions or things that I plan on looking at and changing in the coming year? No, there's some other things that are in there. I'd like to explore some other areas to maybe make a little bit of money with the rabbits. Like I said, help pay for themselves. You know, if I could even strike a balance between their cost and income coming in from them, that would be great, because even if I'm not making a huge profit, it's putting free meat on my table, because we will continue to use them. That's what they're here for. Might look into some more fun sides of things. You know, I've never gotten into tanning. I've never ever done it. But it is obviously an option, because I do grow out to 16 weeks for my grow outs. So those hides are old enough for me to be tanning. My son who, he's a great Etsy shopper, and he's the one who got me this sign last year for Christmas, and this year he got me a pair of rabbit fur slippers from Greece, and they're beautiful and they're really super comfortable and so soft. And those champagnes, their fur is so soft. So hey, who knows, maybe that'll be my next hobby and my next venture. You know, I have a lot of interest, actually, probably more frequently than I get inquiries about rabbits for meat for human consumption, and I do get some of those. I do get a fair number of those. I get requests for rabbit for pet food. So pet food actually is going to be an easier sale, legal sale, than rabbit meat, because of your issues of inspection and processing and things like that. And I'm in a state that doesn't make it that easy. All the states around me, basically, or at least the 3 north of me, are so much better on this. They basically are saying like 1,000 to 2,000 carcasses a year. You just register with the state, say you're doing it, and you can actually direct process and direct sell whole carcasses, and you can't do that here where I am. And what really irritates me about that is they also have basically no slaughter or infrastructure for you to even be able to pay somebody to do it. So it's really, in my mind, putting the kibosh on something that they're not saying we can't do it, but USDA is very unclear, because they kind of have inspection, not really. They kind of toss it and say, hey, if your state lets you do it, but then the states don't do a good job of it either, and it is a very sustainable, economical meat, and one that is very ecologically friendly. And with all the interest in environmental friendliness and healthfulness, I really feel like rabbit, they should be helping make this more mainstream, and to do that they have to help us open up getting it to people. But back to my first point, a lot of interest in the meat for people who are feeding raw diets or prey diets. And I wonder if that's going to get even a little more popular among those feeders. The rabbit meat is like a foundation meat for people who are feeding those diets, but also, you know, a lot of them feed a lot of chicken, and I do understand all about like the protein and the fat, and you can't just feed rabbit. But with this H1N1 flu popping up, if you're a raw diet feeder, I don't know. I'm just kind of speculating and thinking out loud, but it really is an interesting area that I would encourage raisers to explore, because it's a lot easier for you to do. And my understanding, and do not take this as fact, do your own research, because I don't know and I don't sell at this point, but my understanding is that if you're selling a whole carcass, you can get that far without really having to go through any hoops, and it's pretty much legal. But then if you go beyond that, if you mix it with other types of meats or ingredients, or if you're processing it, breaking it down, grinding it or something like that, that may not be. So again, that's all just kind of thinking out loud, but those are some of the areas that I might explore this year and that you might be interested in exploring too. So this is it. That's my New Year's resolution. And if you've got any that you're planning on, I'd love to hear about them. You know, let's all have a conversation, see what everybody's doing with their rabbits, see what your goals are. You know, we all grow and change incrementally. this Rabbitry looks a lot different than what it started as. This started as a few cages in one side of the shed that we used for the rabbit coop, or chicken coop, I'm sorry. And this is where we are today, going on 5 years later. So, you know, I hope you all are having a happy and healthy new year. I hope that this helps you, and I hope more people get into raising meat rabbits. I'd love to see more mainstream. Whether you're raising it or just eating it, that would be awesome to me. And again, you know, happy, healthy new year. Drop in the comments what you're planning to do, and continue to visit us over on the website at meetrabbits.org, and we'll help you along in your journey. Many thanks.